So as many of you guys probably already know by now, China as an entire country when it comes to its economy is not doing very particularly well. Its youth unemployment rate currently stands at about 21.3%, which means that if you were to travel to China right now, representing a huge number of recent graduates, the idea is that of the youth population that you see, 1 in 5 people, more than 1 in 5 people, are now currently out of work inside of China. It's become so bad that they've already stopped reporting all of these statistics because they want to try to hide this information before it gets out in media. Of course, we did make another video that already talks about China's unemployment situation, so I highly recommend checking that video out. It's going to be at the very end screen when you finish watching this video, because in today's video, what I really want to talk about is the rest of China's economy and its economic collapse. Things such as like what's been going on in its world when it comes to things such as like real estate, its demographic, its population, its economy overall, the stock market, everything in that particular world, and even more specifically why this is particularly important to us, even if we happen to be, well, most of us happen to be in the United States of America, because at the end of the day, all of the stuff in our economy is relatively tied together. At the end of the day, we still do rely on China for certain things such as like goods, trades, and services. Many companies rely on China to do business with, and so that is the reason why there's still a really important country, and it's really important to understand what's actually physically going on right over there. But of course, all of this stuff we're going to cover in today's video. So with that said, let's just get right to this video. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, remember to smash the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell. Feel free to leave a comment about your personal thoughts about China. And with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the real estate situation that's going on in China right now. And as most of you guys know is that it's not doing particularly well. The story right now is that over there is that the real estate market is currently inside of a massive bubble that's happening right now. The story is that because real estate happens to be such a popular investment inside of China, what's going on really happening over there is that so many people in China poured so much money into the real estate market to kind of start to buy out homes left and right, that it's basically been causing it to strike up the prices of real estate all the way up until it comes to a point that it becomes a bubble that's now going to pop at any particular minute right now. This is actually not that different in a lot of ways than what happened in the United States back in 2008 and 2009. And that's why I say it's really important to understand what's happening in China, because the economies are relatively connected in its own way, because again, they do business together. And the idea really behind it is that very similar to back in 2008 and 2009, when we had the real estate crisis, it was also a situation where people were buying up property left and right, striking up the prices until finally it was too much, there was too much inventory, and it came to a point that finally, boom, it popped, and that was basically how all the prices collapsed. However, you can say that the story in China is that one of the biggest differences is that it's everything that happened in the US, but even worse and even more drastic right now than what's happening there. The story is that if you go to China right now, there are so many people that poured so much money into investing in real estate, which is what drove up the prices all the way until the prices no longer go up. And that is when things start to come down, and that is when a lot of the stuff related to its economy, which more we're going to talk about in a little bit, starts to really happen and collapse, and all of the troublemaking and all that stuff kind of starts to come together. So the first story is really about its real estate. Now, this actually does also technically go on to a lot of the other big companies that you guys might have already heard about the story with what happened with Evergrande. There's now a story about what's happening with Country Garden. So Country Garden is another massive real estate conglomerate that's happening in China right now that's expected to default relatively soon, or by the time you're watching this, it's possible that they might have even already defaulted as a company. So if they start to collapse and go down under, then what happens is over there is that it's just going to make things even worse. So the bottom line, really the takeaway behind all of this, is that its real estate market is just not doing very well, and it's leading to a lot of other problems and situations that we're going to talk about in a little bit, so definitely stay tuned. But that's really the big idea to what's happening when it comes to their real estate. Now, because of everything happening into its real estate, it probably will lead on to the next topic to what's been happening over there, which is because of China's massive high amount of debt. China right now, long story short, they're in a lot of debt. The US is technically also in a lot of debt as well, but the biggest difference is that I think US happens to just be a much more stronger power to be able to navigate and control their debt. Additionally, if you guys remember, is that back then, US did a lot of stimulus programs to prop up the economy. So even when it was under a lot of debt, while it's true that a lot of these stimulus programs added to even more debt going on, at least they helped to kind of sustain the economy at that particular time. China, however, while they did do their stimulus programs. They technically had stimulus programs while the pandemic was happening, but they shortly cut it off relatively soon, so they never really believed in doing as many stimulus programs compared to the amount that the US did. Because of that reason, it's putting China in a lot of massive debt, but not the debt that they want to be a part of compared to what the US, the kind of debt that the US is in. The one in China isn't particularly, it's particularly a lot worse and harder to cure, if that's maybe the better way to put it. It's a little bit more complex, but maybe hopefully that's the better way to put it. But because of what's happening there right now with its massive debt problem, that's another thing that's going to be ruining its economy even greater than it already has been. And then moving on to the next thing that's really causing China's economic collapse is going to be everything related to its population and its demographic, because this is one of the actually most important things to really take away, so definitely hear through about this, is that because the story right now is that China, as most of you guys know, they're known for having a massive population of people. In fact, so massive that there was the one-child law, if you guys remember, or you guys probably already know, that's been going on for years and years now, where a lot of families in China are only allowed to have one child. But because of what's been happening there, the difference between China and many other countries, but especially a lot of other first world countries, is that China, on the other hand, is going through a population decline and a case of deflation right now. In other words, things are going down in China. Population is very important in driving a country's economy, because as you increase population, it also increases productivity. And as you increase productivity, you increase economic activity. And so as that ends up happening, it drives and starts to improve the economy. This is a very similar argument to the reason why many people believe that the stock market always in general, in most cases, long term, goes up in blooming economies. And the reason why is because population has to increase. As population increases, more productivity happens. And as more productivity happens, more economic activity happens, just like as mentioned before. And because of that, it drives the economy and props it up to be able to basically bloom and blossom. And so when you have a situation right now like what's happening in China, where the population is actually going down and less people are having children, they kept the one-child rule going on for too long, you end up in a case where the productivity is falling even greater. This goes back to the real estate, and again, going back why I say everything is so tied together, is that because back then, or not back then, but going on right now, is that back then, when people started to buy real estate, what they did not start to realize until very recently is that a lot of the homes that people purchased in China are actually unoccupied. They're empty homes that are basically just sitting there with no one to basically fill. And if population is declining, then what ends up happening is that you have less people to physically fill those homes. So imagine having an economy where everyone's trying to buy a home, but when they buy the home, no one's actually physically living in these homes. And if nobody's living in these homes, then what's driving up the economy? And the answer is not much, or at least not what they want to be driving up the economy. And so as a result, what ends up happening is that things start to collapse and things start to fall. And that is the story to what's happening right now inside of China. It's a combination of everything related to their real estate situation, their huge debt, their debt situation, their debt crisis, their population declining, their demographics, the fact that they're not having as many children, the fact that economic activity is going downhill. That's what's contributing to a lot of the stuff that's happening happening in China right now at this time. And because of a lot of the lack of leadership that's happening in China, because of that particular reason, that is the reason why China is not doing very, very well economically right now. And there are so many articles that you guys might have already seen, and hopefully this is one of them that you guys have hopefully enjoyed, that's really leading to the case of why China is now falling apart, and their economy is expected to collapse, or might have even already collapsed relatively soon from when you are watching this particular video. But of course, what ends up happening to China, only the future will be able to tell. But we just have to see in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. So with that being said, that's really what I wanted to kind of just highlight in today's video, talking about China and their economic collapse. If you guys found that relatively insightful, maybe consider smashing the like button, or otherwise leave a comment for improvements as well. It is always greatly appreciated just to hear from you guys. Suggestions, comments, any thoughts about anything. Consider subscribing. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.